Well, welcome everybody to Restorative Yoga. We've been working with a really cool theme this week, or at least I think it's cool. We've been working with heart essence and the very core of things. In Sanskrit, the word we use is hridayam. And it's literally the Sanskrit word for heart, but it's also it has the meaning like heart essence. You know how some things don't translate just perfectly from one language to another. Hridayam is more than just like the physical heart that beats in your chest. It's also the very core or essence of something. So we're going to be doing some poses tonight that help us to open our heart center. We're also going to find some poses that allow us to practice what to do when we lose touch with our center or our core, our essence, so that we can practice on the mat in a safe place, so that way when things happen in the real world, we're kind of a little bit more prepared. And just because I like to bring some yoga philosophy into it, we'll bring up a couple of Sanskrit sutras from Yoga Sutras. The first is Yoga Sutra 1.3, and this is a translation by Nishala Joy Devi, who's one of my favorites. Hers says, "United in the heart, consciousness steadied, then we abide in our true nature, joy." Another version of that is, "Then the seer abides is in his own nature." And so we're about kind of connecting to that essence, or another word for that in Sanskrit is satnam, true nature, true identity. We also are in touch with, as we still ourselves, as we become steady and still in the body, as we open the heart center, and as we kind of bring consciousness or awareness to that open heart center, we start to realize that the very essence of who we are is the same as the essence of all living things. It is prana, it is breath. In the biblical tradition, we would call that Holy Spirit, that breath that makes you alive, that gives you your being. And so, yeah, that's a lot of things, and we're gonna try to use our bodies to let our minds and our hearts kind of wrap around some of these things. So our first posture is a really nice, chill, easy one. It's basically kind of a shavasana, but so I might have found a prop that you guys don't have. That is this bolster here. It's a little pranayama bolster. They're about the same length, but they're about half as thick and only about a third as wide. But fear not, if you do not have one of these pranayama bolsters, we can make one with a blanket or towel. So we'll need one of those. And the way we'll do this, basically what we want to do is try to recreate that same shape. So a little bit skinnier than your regular yoga bolster, maybe folding a blanket into like thirds or something like that to kind of create a similar pattern. You'll have to play with whatever you're working with, whatever materials you're working with, to find the right length and everything. But the way this is going to work, or what we're going to use it for, is when we lie back, we want this to represent this pranayama bolster. So let me show you where it goes, because it doesn't fall apart when I pick it up. Basically, it's going to rest underneath your sacrum and underneath your spine. Maybe your head is also supported by it. Maybe the head relaxes back and the throat opens. But the whole point of this support, and why it's called a pranayama bolster, is to gently lift the heart above the shoulders. And this creates more space in the chest for breath to flow. So that's kind of what we're recreating with our blanket. And so we can go ahead and just come on down to that support. And again, back of the head might be supported. You might also discover that it's more comfortable for you to let the head be off of the bolster. Legs can either be long and kind of wide. You can also leave the soles of the feet on the floor and just let the knees fall together, so you can relax all the muscles in your legs. And arms can take a number of different shapes as well. They might be down by your side, kind of like Shavasana. They might be kind of little cactus arms, or goalpost kind of arms. Or maybe the hands kind of come closer together above the head and the elbows can come wide. So choose the one that feels most supportive and comfortable for your body. Then begin to scan the body for places of tension. What we're looking for is any place that we might be doing instead of being. So there might be a place where we're holding our shoulder to be a little bit more supported. Maybe we can either relax that down or find some other support to help that so those muscles can relax. We're going to begin to scan through the face, the hands, the throat, and just find all the places where you can just release a little bit more. We're going to move from that doing space into that being space. The essence of who we are is not what we do. Sometimes we can express who we are through what we do, but who we are is who we are. And so in that essence of being, in that place of being rather than doing, feel your heart gently lifted. Feel a sense of when something is important or we want to put focus on it, we raise it up, we elevate it. See if you can connect to that more devotional sense of bringing the heart up a little higher, of placing it somewhere almost like on a pedestal. And just allow the heart center to fill and empty with each inhale and exhale. So according to Patanjali in his sutras, he defines yoga as either the stilling or the ceasing of the fluctuations of the mind, which he calls vrittis. And it's not just the mind that has its fluctuations. Our lives are also predisposed to these hithers and thithers kind of pulling all over the place, especially in our most recent time in history. Things are changing all the time. And we also, as human beings, change from the time we're born until the moment we are currently in. We've been lots of different people. We've had lots of different costumes and different ways of speaking, different ways of eating over time. But throughout it all, we have some kind of consistent perspective. And whatever that is, that witnesses the whole thing and remembers it as me, as different as we are from when we were 4 years old or 15 years old, we have that consistent perspective. That is the witness. That is the essence of who we are. That consistent, unchanging, eternal perspective. With this place where our heart is higher than the shoulders, see if you can allow the shoulders to become very heavy and just relax fully. Shoulders represent responsibility. And so you can just let go of being responsible and just simply allow whatever is moving through you to move through you. Take a few rounds here of deeper breaths. See if you can slowly inhale to your capacity, maybe pausing for just a microsecond, and then fully exhale, completely emptying the lungs of any breath or air. Then maybe again pause for just a microsecond, and take a few rounds of breath like that. And just let your breath soften back into what feels like a natural rhythm. Maybe we're just a little bit more aware of the expansion and contraction of the ribs. Maybe with each inhale, we feel that expansion coming from that support from behind us as we inhale. And maybe we feel with our hearts so open and vulnerable, a deeper sense of trust as when we exhale, our body sinks into that support more willingly. And consider what part of your essence, your essential nature, is in those states of expansion or being lifted or trusting and grounding. Just about 3 more breaths here in stillness, and we'll begin to find some movement again. From wherever you are, begin to find a little bit of movement that maybe allows you to either roll to one side to come off of that pranayama support, or simply press your hands into the floor and rise again. We're coming into just a shape where we're able to set our pranayama bolster that we made to the side. An alternate option for either your blanket roll or this little bolster is to place it underneath your knees instead. And we're going to stay in this little lying down shape. We're going to come right back to the back, but this time flat on the earth. And just notice the difference that support, just that little bit of lift underneath the spine can make to the feeling of openness in the chest. And we're going to see if we can kind of recreate those bigger, deeper breaths from that support with just the spine on the floor. So maybe the shoulder blades will just kind of gently tuck under the body a smidge. Once we're in that shape, we're going to take the world's laziest moon bends. One of the things that I think the moon can teach us in regard to essence and our essential nature is that every night when we look into the sky, the moon is a different shape, it is a different brightness, but no matter how it appears to us on Earth, we know inherently that the whole moon is there. Even if we only see a little tiny sliver of it, we've got a beautiful full moon right now. So what we're going to do is mimic that full moon a little bit by bringing the arms out into like kind of a bigger X shape. So arms are kind of reaching up above the head and kind of out wide, so we have a nice big V. We might create a little bit more space as well between the heels, just so we're in a kind of an X shape. And this is sort of our full moon home base. This is the essence, the Hridayam. This is the whole picture. And just pause here, just feel that expansiveness. Feel the symmetry of the body. We'll take one more big breath in, filling yourself again to capacity with that little micro pause, then exhale, fully squeezing your navel in towards your spine to fully empty, little micro pause. And then as your breath returns to a normal pace, we're gonna walk the shoulders and head just little by little, step by step, over to one side of the mat. You can start with either side. We're going to do both, so whatever's going to work best for you in the arrangement that you're in. And feel how one side of your body is now very open. Legs might also walk in that same direction, so we just kind of turn the body into a nice big C shape or a crescent moon shape. And these are the moments where we feel maybe just a little out of center, right? We've been knocked off course. We feel just a little off. And this happens to us on a pretty regular basis, especially with everything changing so quickly. But we could adapt and become like the moon and just shine the best we can with what we've got. See if in this asymmetrical, slightly less comfortable shape, we can still find that essence of heart. See if you can connect to the way you felt in that big X-shaped full moon center, even in this asymmetrical side bending shape.
where can you let go to what is? Where can you allow the shadow that is crossing over you to remind you about the parts that are shining in the moment? How can you redirect your attention to the part of you that is broad, the part of you that is open, the part of you that is abundant, the part of you that is still shining as a whole? Anyone who has undertaken any kind of spiritual practice, including martial arts or other kinds of visual and musical arts, anybody who really gets into their art form, notices the sort of seasonal changing or the ups and downs of it, where we have moments of pure bliss as we're feeling really creative, or we feel really connected to source, so we really feel intensely authentic about who we are. And then we also have those other times of our lives where we feel overshadowed, or we feel uninspired, or we're kind of in a darker place. Remember the moon during those times. And even if it's just a sliver, let whatever you have left shine to remind you of that whole. Take 2 more breaths on this side. Big breaths into that open side of the body. And nice and slow, head and shoulders kind of taking little steps. Come back to center. Feel free to realign your spine. Come back to that big, broad X, kind of spreading the arms and legs, reaching the fingers and toes away from your belly and your heart. Take up lots of space. Maybe the shoulder blades tuck underneath you again to open the heart center. And feel both the vastness of your body, how much space you're taking up, but also feel that same vastness, that same openness in your heart center, your essence, your hridayam, the part of you that is a reflection of the divine. Remember that even though we are humans and we are fallible, we are still that same essence of that one. Some might call it God. But whatever that oneness is, that is everything all at once, the Om, we are a part of that as it is a part of us. Feel your centeredness, your groundedness, your symmetry for another breath or 2. And then begin your journey to the opposite side of your mat. Finding your crescent moon shape now on the other side of your mat. Legs might walk in that same direction. Just keep your sacrum kind of on the floor. You might even cross one ankle over the other if you like. Arms can be wide or straight and long. What we're looking for is the biggest change in the side body and the spine. Feel that asymmetry now. And the way it is to be pulled away from center. To have that moment of being a little off. And in this time, can you find your open heart? Can you breathe into the parts of you that are abundant, even as other parts of you may feel lacking or limited? Can you let go to the shape that you're in and just be there? And not try to do the pose, just be the pose. I can't remember if it was Patabi Joyce or BKS Iyengar, both trained by the same teacher and very different from each other, but comrades of all their lives, that said we don't use the body to get into the pose. We use the pose to get into the body. So just kind of feel what it is to be this shape. Make any adjustments to feel more supported. We're here for a few more rounds of breath. Take a couple of those deeper breaths into that open side. And seeing if we can find the shine of the full moon, even in our little slivered crescent moon. Take one more full breath in and out, and then begin to make your journey back towards center. Once we arrive, and take your time to get there, once we arrive in that big open X shape again, we're just gonna take about 2 or 3 breaths. Coming back to our true nature, our regular form, and our vastness, and acknowledging that both in the physical body and in the heart and in our consciousness and our intelligence. Then just before we find our next movement, take your stretched out position and make it a little bit more active. So really kind of straighten, point the toes, stretch the fingers out, take up even more space, find your absolute maximum limit. Then take a full breath in and see if you can take that breath past your body to expand just a little bit more. And as you release that breath, start to bend at the elbows and knees. Let your knees come into your chest. Take a little bit of gentle rocking from side to side. Then find your way to a side lying shape for a breath or so. And rising back to seated. We're going to rearrange some props. I know what you're thinking. You had us get all this stuff and we've only used one thing. So now we're gonna bring out some more tools. If you have your blocks, 2 of those are gonna be super helpful along with your bolster. I'm gonna set some other things to the side for a moment. We're basically kind of following a supine moon salutation in some ways. We did our moon bends, we took our big expansive shape, and now we're basically going to find what amounts to a supine goddess pose. Opening up the hips a bit as well. We're going to do this by bringing 2 blocks to where your feet are going to be. A little distance between them. And your bolster just kind of plop right on top. So we've made like a little Stonehenge kind of thing. And this is going to support the legs or the calves. You might choose to use a folded blanket, like a flat blanket, to rest behind your head, depending on if you're practicing on carpet, or I'm on hardwood, so I can always use a little extra padding. But we're going to come down to the back yet again. How lovely is restorative? We spend most of it just lying around on pillows. It's the best. So once your feet, or your legs are rather, up on top of your little Stonehenge that you've made, we're gonna come down to the back. If you're using any support under your head, make sure it's only under your head, but your shoulders are resting on the floor. You could alternatively use that little pranayama roll that we made earlier, if you like, along the length of the spine. And basically we're just gonna come into that same kind of goalpost arms. Your feet can be kind of out to the corners of your bolster, so we have a little bit of width here. If that's not your jam and you're not really feeling that for your feet, an alternative way to take this would be to remove the blocks from the equation, bring your bolster a little bit lower, and come into a little bit more like a Supta Baddha Konasana type of shape, so a bound angle pose. Your pinky edges of both feet can rest on the bolster, and ideally your shins are supported, but your hips are lower than your feet. And then again, arms coming into that either little goalposty kind of shape, cactus arms. And this is basically our goddess pose when we're standing. Only much more relaxed, a little easier on the inner thighs, I hope. If you don't feel supported there, feel free to use some of your extra blankets to make it so you do feel supported. So we have a couple of different understandings of what strength is, depending on who you ask. Certain people will tell you certain things, and not everybody agrees on what being strong is. But my favorite thing about goddess pose, whether we're taking it here on our backs in a more passive way or we're standing on our feet and holding this shape, is that the strength doesn't come from being rigid in our muscles or, I don't know, through being like particularly muscularly strong. The strength of this pose comes from its openness, from its vulnerability. It's a very feminine kind of strength. It is open, it is vulnerable, and yet it's the wide base of support that we have here that makes this pose so steady. And it was exactly that steadiness described in the sutras that helped us to find our Hridayam, our very essence. So just kind of wherever you are supported, if you're using the floor or your bolster or blanket, whatever you might be using, see if you can just let yourself kind of melt onto that shape. Become very trusting. Feel your connection to the earth here, our whole back body supported, and yet so open. We've been in the pose for just a little while now. It might be a good time to fine tune, maybe gently lull the head from side to side or gently tuck the shoulder blades a little deeper under the body. Make any adjustments to your toes or whatever needs doing. Once you've done those adjustments, take a full capacity breath in, that micro pause, and a full release of breath as you squeeze the navel in towards the spine. Relax, open, and let go. I'm more of the opinion that strength has less to do with being physically strong and more to do with acknowledging one's challenges with openness. Maybe you are that person, or you know someone who, when faced with challenge or changes of plans, are just really graceful about how they respond to that. They're kind of go with the flow. They're kind of down for anything, just open to whatever. And that's a way of expressing who you are in every situation. Our essence of being does not come from our circumstances. Our circumstances are constantly changing. Our essence of our being comes from remaining steady in ourselves, no matter what vrittis or fluctuations are happening in our mind, no matter what fluctuations and vrittis are happening in our circumstances, no matter the vrittis that are happening out in the world. And we have all of those things going on in the world today. The trick is exactly what we're practicing now, to remain open, to trust in the support that the universe literally has your back. Like, treat the floor and your props in this moment like that's the universe. It's got you. Trust it, let go to it, and let the vulnerability of opening and trusting reveal the shining light of who you are. Reveal the full moon that's kind of hidden in that little sliver of moon that we sometimes feel like when we're feeling limited or lacking or challenged. Let yourself shine in every phase. Let the essence of who you are find its way out from the shadows.
Feel the backs of the hands supported by the earth and the palms open to the sky, to the air around you. Feel a sort of anchoring or heaviness in the pelvis, in the back of your skull. Feel just a small lift or spaciousness between your shoulder blades. And as each breath comes in, feel that expansive nature of your essence. Scientists tell us that the universe is in a constant state of expansion and has been since the Big Bang, which of course is the original sound that is symbolized by Om. It is the universal vibration of all things. It is the great noise. And if the universe is always expanding and our true nature, our Satnam, is that we are the universe, allow your body to sort of enact that expansion with each breath in. And the universe is also always in motion. There's always something going on. Stars are burning, planets are orbiting, solar systems are swirling, things are being created and transformed and destroyed all over the place. And so just let that sort of represent the vrittis of the mind, the vrittis and fluctuations of our daily life. And see if you can just, in this moment, be solid in who you are. That the very essence of who you are is unchanged by all of these things. The mind is changing. The universe is in motion. Our lives are in motion. But the essence of who we are is in that stillness. That yogas chitta vritti nirodha. That yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations in the mind. Last 3 breaths in this shape, our supine goddess pose. Connecting to the strength of feminine power. You can pull your feet and your legs away from your props, just again bringing knees in towards the chest, maybe finding a little bit of that rocking motion. And then we can rise back up. We'll probably adjust our props just a little bit. If you guys were using your blocks and your bolster was high, you might remove your blocks now and either use your little rolled pranayama bolster underneath your knees, or you could also use your wider bolster. That's one of my favorite variations. We're going to take a forward fold. But again, we're going to allow the legs to be just a little bit lifted up. So with the legs extended in front of you, calves are still resting on your bolster, but it's a little closer to the floor. And again, we can find a little bit of that extra spaciousness between the ankles here, so they might be at the very edges of your bolster. Your blocks might be useful here as well. We're going to just kind of fold our way over the bolster. But that's pretty far down. My head's not going to rest on that bolster without some additional support, so that's why I brought my blocks into play. I'm going to come part of the way down and just kind of notice where my forehead is going to land and see if I can line the blocks up so that they can support my forehead just between my brows. And the blocks can go in tall settings, medium settings, flat settings. You can use one block, you can stack them. So try to see if you can experiment and find just the right support for you. And ideally, as you're kind of fine-tuning the pose, if your eyes are open, you're kind of looking straight into your heart. This can be a little tough on the hamstrings. If this does not feel good to your body, you can also just bring your feet outside of the bolster and just kind of bow between your knees this way. The back body should be round and expansive. Front body is compressed, and in just the same ways we did in our little moon bends where one side body was open and the other was closed, our front body here is a little bit more collapsed in our fold. And this is sort of the way we often see ourselves. I'm limited. There's not enough. But
But when we are connected to that hridayam, that essence of our being, when we look into the limitations that we experience in our physical selves and our mental selves and our human selves, we can see through that into that unlimited self that we see represented here by the back body. See if you can find a little more ease and relaxation through the feet and the legs. Soften and relax the shoulders. Let go of any responsibility. Let go of any tension or holding. Let go of any doing. And just simply be here in the shape. The yogic practice of svadhyaya, self-concentration, self-focus, self-awareness, is also a necessary regular practice when working from your heart center. As you look into yourself, notice what work is yours to do in the world. What is your dharma? What have you been charged with? What gifts do you bring to this world that no one else can bring but you? The only way to give that, the only way to fulfill that work is to do it from your heart center. We cannot do it from our individual egos. We cannot do it from the intelligence of our mind. And we cannot do it from the limitations of our humanness. It is only by inviting the flow of divine essence to dwell within us, to flow within us, to be received in and kind of passed right back out through us, just like our breath. So for the last maybe minute or so that we're here in this shape, I recommend breathing in through the crown of the head, just allowing the breath to kind of enter there, even if it's just a visualization. Breathing in through the crown, pulling that light or that aliveness or that prana or that essence into the heart center. And as you breathe out, let it come out of the back of your heart. We've got this wide open space back there. Breathe in divinity. Let it reach your heart center. And just sort of let it push out any burdens that might be on your heart. As that breath passes through the head and the throat, let it clear your mind. Let it clear the expression of who you are. Let your essence come out through that throat center in a way that is authentic and true. And just kind of let all those upper energy centers be cleared by these breaths. Last 3 breaths here. And when those breaths are complete, maybe your hands support you as you rise. Maybe your heart just lifts you up and out of this fold. We're going to bring the hands behind the body, fingertips point away. And just for a couple of breaths, we're going to find the opposite shape. So we're going to lift the heart open, gently lift the chin, open the throat, the heart, the belly, pull the shoulders back behind the body as if your elbows were going to kind of touch each other. They probably won't, but that's the aim. So that now the front body is very open. The back body is a little bit more bent and collapsed. But no matter where we see our fullness, it's somewhere.
Whenever there's some kind of limitation, there's always another place of abundance when we stay open to it, when we receive it. So releasing this pose, coming into a more neutral spine. We'll move our bolster yet again. Blocks could probably be set aside for the moment. A folded or flat blanket, maybe even that pranayama roll might feel good here. We're just going to turn the bolster the opposite direction now. So the short edge is closer to you. And then we're going to turn our bodies so that one hip, again, we're going to do both sides. So start with the one that makes sense for you. One hip is close to that short edge of your support. And then the feet are going to both, like the knees are going to head in the same direction towards the bolster. So your legs might be just kind of stacked. The back knee might be kind of in the crook of your front foot. If your knees are a little bit more stacked one on top of another, this is where a little support of a folded blanket, a couch pillow, something might feel good between the bones. So finding a comfortable place for your feet. Then we're going to twist the body towards so that the heart is facing the far edge of your support. So we have one hand on either side. And before we fold forward, we're going to take a big lift again here. So opening the throat, opening the heart. And we'll start to walk our hands down along either side. Knees and nose could be in the same direction. They might be in the opposite direction. And feel free to choose differently through as we hold the pose. And we're just going to stay in each side of our twist for about 2 minutes. So not a super duper long time. But this twist sort of represents our constantly changing, spiraling life, our circumstances, our mindset. It's kind of fun to think about and remember all the people we've already been, all the ways we used to dress, all the haircuts we've had, all the different kinds of food we've eaten, what made us happy, what activities we were involved in, where we put our concentration, what relationships excited us at different times of our lives. We are constantly in that spiral of change. And yet, because we remember all those parts of our lives, we do have that consistent perspective. So see if you can feel the twist of your body. See if you can kind of sense how, as we turned, the perspective shift was there. What we were seeing was different, but the thing perceiving, or the one perceiving, the seer, is still abiding in its own nature. It's Satnam, the Hridaya, the essence of who you are. Just about 5 more breaths on this side. Make them count. Big inhales. Notice where there's spaciousness in the body. Long exhales. Feel the joy and liberation that comes with surrender. Allowing yourself to be supported. Notice where your hands are, and if they are not turned down towards the floor, flip the palms to turn them towards the floor. And as you come to the last breath cycle in your last few rounds here, simply press into the floor to rise up. Take whatever hands on the same side of the bolster as your knees and just kind of take a big arc, drawing a big arc over top of your head. Just kind of a few times take a little bit of this motion. Notice where your perspective goes, where your eyes go. But even as the perspective within the room or the space that you're in changes, the person seeing, or the one who sees, is consistent. Finally, we're going to turn ourselves away from the bolster for a moment. If you had something between your knees that you want to use again, just put it somewhere handy. Just briefly again, we're going to lift open the heart and then start to turn our opposite hip
towards our support. Maybe we reset that support between the knees or shins. And once you've got your feet sort of situated, turn your body again so that your heart is facing the long edge of your support, the far side of your support. Hands press into either side. Find that big lift. Open your heart center and then take all that openness and just lay it out over your support. Again, knees and nose might be same direction or opposite direction. Hands should be relaxed, whether they're palms up or palms down. And again, feel that turning within you. This is the flow of the gunas, the conditions of this world, constantly changing from one to the other, from solid to liquid to gas. But even as we acknowledge that ice is different from water, which is different from steam, we know that the essence is the same. It is still H2O. And that's the way we are aiming to be, that we are steady within our authentic self, no matter what our external circumstances might be. That we exist within our own essence. And again, we won't be in this shape a super long time. Just let your breath sort of carry you into both a place of opening and a place of surrendering. Imagine those qualities you've had since you were a child that are still the same. Maybe it's a favorite food or a favorite color. Some quality about you that is consistent when everything else has changed. We've got about another 30 to 45 seconds in this pose. See if you can remain fully present without considering what might be next. No doing, just being. Last few breaths flowing through the swirl of this pose. And you'll sort of feel the moment when it's right and time to come out. And when that moment appears to you, just turn your palms down against the floor again and just gently give yourself some pressure to rise up from your shape. Coming to turn away from the bolster again. Just briefly opening the heart center. Maybe the knees fall from side to side. And then for our last pose, we're going to find whatever our most comfortable Shavasana is going to be. So that might look like rolling your little pranayama bolster and lying along the spine for support. It might look like lying flat on your back. It might look like legs up the wall. It might look like that little Stonehenge where we elevated the feet and shins and calves. So I'll let you kind of choose your own adventure for resting, but I would love it if you were super, super comfortable. So taking your time and being really mindful about the placement of your props and allowing yourself a few redos if you need to, so that as you finally settle into stillness, you can stay there. Notice also as you're sort of setting up your props and things,
if there are any other last movements that your body might need before finding stillness. Is there any doing left in you that needs to be done so that you can just be? As you kind of settle into your stillness, I'm going to give you just a little something to contemplate in your resting pose. This comes from the brilliant teacher Ram Dass. He says, when you have quieted your mind enough and transcended your ego enough, you can hear how it really is. That when you are with a candle flame, you are the candle flame. And when you are with another being's mind, you are the other being's mind. And when there is a task to do, you are the task. It is the mindless quality of total involvement that comes only when the ego is quiet and there is no attachment. It is only when you reside quietly in your own hridayam that you become the one of total light, unbearable compassion, and infinite power.
Just allow yourself to rest in that steadiness. Knowing you have quieted the mind enough and allowed the stillness to help you transcend that personal identity. Where we feel the edges and boundaries and borders of the body becoming soft and blurred. Feeling the steadiness of the floor, that solidness sort of seeping into our bones. And the open spaciousness of the room around us seeping into the front body, the heart, the mind. And looking for the place where those two seemingly opposite qualities of sthira and sukha find their place of meeting within. So if you can exist purely as a vessel for breath, a temporary container that flows in and flows out, being grateful just to receive it, just to let it go, just to allow it to pass through you. That is Hridayam, the essence. Maybe drink a little deeper of that sweet breath. Longer inhales, more surrendered exhales. And when you feel the stillness and steadiness within that consistent witnessing perspective within, start to find very small, subtle movements in the body. Fingertips, toes, again, maybe head lulls gently side to side. Feel the joy of being alive. Feel the essence flowing through you, prana in every cell. And as you find deeper breath, as you find more movement, maybe we stretch out in some way to take that vastness back on, to embody the bigness that we really are. And then maybe as we stretch away and the fingertips are wide and the toes are pointed, we start to pull all of that infinite nature and invite it and welcome it in towards our core as we curl up. Then gently, when the time feels right, roll to your side or find your way from however you are resting into an upright and seated pose. Find, as you arrive upright, the sitting bones grounding, finding that stillness, that base of support and steadiness in the low body. Feel expansion through the heart and feel just as the tailbone and sitting bones are connected to the earth as our material source, let the crown of the head reach up and connect to that spiritual source. Turn the palms up. They can either rest on your knees or just be held about heart height out to the sides. And feel the energy from each palm. In one hand, we have our individual self, our identity as a human, our story. And in the other hand, we hold wholeness, the all that is, the oneness, God, whatever it is, the universe, the everything. And we're going to take those two things and just touch palm to palm, joining those into one thing, and then pull those hands into the heart, where we invite wholeness, oneness, and the peaceful coexistence of our individuality with our wholeness. Chin can drop gently to chest to look again within our hearts, to acknowledge what we are, who we are, and what our essence is, our consistent witnessing perspective. As we flow with this energy, as we identify with our wholeness, we begin to pave the way and open space for others to claim their wholeness as well. And so our practice becomes not only of service to ourselves, making our own lives better, but is also then a gift to all whose lives we interact with. And so we close our practice with this prayer. Loka samasta sukhino Bhavantu. May all beings be happy, healthy, safe, and free. Namaste.